Is Aldi the cheapest supermarket? Big changes if you're a tenant. Fancy a little bit of luxury on holiday this year? Are you having a baby this year or maybe going to a wedding? And what would happen if I shopped in Aldi? Hi and welcome to Money for Mums, where I share tips, deals and knowledge to help you with your future paycheck. Coffee, and I should have made one because I'm really tired. But anyway, let's get going. Are you shopping at the cheapest supermarket? So if you've not heard of it, there's a company called Which, where they do this test every month where they check the prices of various different items, and then they check to see how much it would cost across the 8 big supermarkets. And as always, Aldi is always the cheapest supermarket, often followed by Lidl, and their average of £171.32 in comparison to Asda, which was roughly £193. I usually shop in Asda, if not Tesco, and that's the difference. Like, I can imagine if there's maybe a £20 difference each week over the course of a month, a 4-week month, a 5-week month, that's going to add up. That's an extra £100. Pop into Aldi if you're on a bit of a strict budget. Have you heard the latest with the Renters' Rights Act? Now, from the 1st of May, which is today, there have been huge changes announced. A couple of the key findings that really stuck out for me is that renters are no longer tied to long-term contracts. So they could technically move into a property and leave after a few months. And if they are complaining about the conditions of the property, they don't need to worry because landlords actually have to provide a fair reason for why they may ask their tenant to leave. They can't just say, oh, they want to sell the property or they want to move back in. With these new rules in mind, what does it mean for the tenant? What does it look like for the tenant? Well, it means that they no longer have to stay in a property up until when it's ended. It also means that they're able to challenge conditions of the property that they're not happy in. And they've also got a longer period of time. Should they have to leave the property, it's now been extended up to 4 months. But this is also depending on the tenant's circumstances, such as are there any rent arrears. And there's lots of changes, but another one that really stood out to me as well is that landlords can no longer ask for 6 to 12 months up front, which I find crazy that there's landlords that do that. But I hear this is a thing in big cities, so it seems like it's much more fairer for the tenant, which is really good to hear. One thing I would mention with the changes to the rent, I've been stung before in the past, and a couple of things I always like to do and would always recommend anyone else is when you're moving into a property, if you spot any damage to the property on your first day, take pictures of it and report it. Even if they don't act on that, if you can at least show you had reported it and at that time it was already damaged before you had a chance to move in, that will make a huge difference to any potential claims that might come in, especially when it comes to recovering your deposit. Generally, this is really good because I remember when we first moved into this place, when we left our last place, part of the reason why we sort of rushed and we took a place bigger than we actually wanted to get was because we didn't want to sign another 12 to 24 month contract, because that house was so small for our family that we knew we could not last in that house for another 2 years as our kids got bigger. And yeah, just knowing that there's that flexibility there to leave at any point is definitely much more suitable. Are you going on holiday this year? And if so, have you considered going to an airport lounge? I've always been under the assumption that you needed to fly business class or first class to go in an airport lounge. You can actually buy passes. It works out to be cheaper. It's something to consider. Think about it like this. When you go to the airport, often you're waiting around for a couple of hours and you decide to just buy something to eat there, or maybe you have a couple of drinks. But by the time you spend that with the airport prices, you're probably spending roughly around £36. Buy an airport lounge pass that often comes with food and drink, and you're staying in much more comfortable conditions. and it's probably a little bit cheaper. So what can you do to try and save a little bit of money on an airport lounge if you decide to go down this path? Comparison sites you can check. You can also check if you've got a credit card, your benefits, because sometimes that's included. If you're a frequent flyer, then maybe just consider getting an annual membership, because by the time you are traveling 10 times a year, food at the airport, it probably works out to be a little bit. A bonus tip as well is if you're a key worker, then you're likely to get a discounted pass anyway. So something to bear in mind if you're traveling. I remember when we came back from Portugal a couple of years ago, our flight was delayed, and thankfully we got one of the few four-seated chairs and tables. But more and more people entered the airport. You could just see there was just not enough seats. I remember looking up and seeing some people in the airport lounge. I remember thinking, oh, that must be really nice. Even though I was quite happy that we had our table, but it just makes you realise I could have bought an airport lounge pass and been able to sit there quite comfortably, especially for a delayed flight. Are you having a baby this year? Or maybe you're attending a wedding? If so, John Lewis might have some really cool discounts for you. I've spent a little bit of time browsing the site. They've got 20% off nurseries, dresses and suits. So if you're going to a wedding, it's definitely going to save some money there. And I've had a look at the dresses, and they've got some really nice dresses. I really love this black dress, but I've spent my clothing budget for this month. This is a lovely dress, but not in my budget for this month. They've also got bundles as well. So if you're planning on buying a pram, they've got discounts here, where it's really going to help with the cost of the baby. And when I was pregnant with my daughter, one of the things that I did that really helped me manage my budget at the time was have a sort of baby budget, I guess. And it was a chance where I was able to list everything I wanted to buy for the baby, and then also see how, and by the time I did that, I was able to prioritize what things we absolutely needed and what things were wants. And also it gave me the chance to shop around. I created a baby planner which I was selling on Etsy for quite a while, but it was really helpful. It really allowed me to feel confident and comfortable in my finances before maternity leave. And another tip that I had done at the time as well is when I found out I was pregnant, immediately I started stocking up. And what was so amazing about this was I started stocking up in January 2020, and guess what happened in March 2020? Yep. And on top of that, I lost my role as well. So it really helped during that time where our budget was very small, but we only needed to focus on buying fresh food and no toiletries, because I had stocked up on shower gels and deodorant and cleaning products and all that type of stuff before I had the baby. Finally, it's payday weekend this weekend, and usually what I normally do is do a huge shop in Asda or Tesco with all the dry foods, and then the first week full shop, so like, you know, fresh fruit, meats and so on. But this month I've decided to do things a little bit differently, and I've challenged myself to shop in Aldi-only, because I've kind of reached a breaking point where I'm thinking every month I'm over budget when it comes to my groceries. I'd much rather spend that money on experiences and building wealth. I decided that for the course of May, I'm going to be going to shop in Aldi. And that is everything. Thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll speak to you soon. Bye.